this fall.
The first on our agenda is the recognition of achievements and awards. And let me just say, in our president's absence, he was called away for today, and so I will be conducting the meeting. I am Linda Davis. Excited about being here. Thank you, Mr. Davis. All right. So we have a list of visitors. I have. There's no way. I have 6 people that are addressing us tonight under our public interest portion of this. We have a podium set up for you and a microphone. I have a statement that I will read prior to anyone beginning, and then we'll go by the order in which you're listed on our references. So, all right. Oh, achievements and awards first?
Ms. Davis, I think the first, yes ma'am, the first item is to call the meeting to order, which has been done. We need to do a roll call. So if you don't mind, I'll do the roll call. Dr. Maddox. Dr. Knox.
Present.
Dr. Gant.
Here.
Mr. Worthy.
Here.
Ms. Davis.
Here.
Dr. Diamond.
Here. Excellent. All right.
Then I think we have some recognitions that Dr. Thomas will lead us through.
So awesome. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Vice President Davis, other members of the board. Tonight I have the privilege of honoring some outstanding individuals in the Clark County School District. Honorees, as I call your name and explain your awards, please come to the podium, accept your certificate, and shake hands with our board members. First, we have our Better Everyday Award winner, and that is Ms. Carletha Pearson, AP at Gaines Elementary School. Mrs. Pearson has intentionally deemed advancing teacher knowledge and leadership ability through professional learning a top priority at Gaines. Through the Ccsd Curriculum Network and AVID program currently being weekly learning opportunities, directly enhancing stronger classroom environments and smarter student thinkers. Congratulations. Next we have our Spelling Bee winner. We're pleased to announce that Bernie Harris Lyons Gustavo Dominguez placed second place at the Region 7 Spelling Bee and first runner-up at the State Spelling Bees. Did we go here? Gustavo Dominguez. Congratulations, and we appreciate you representing Clark County Schools so well. And lastly, we have our Young Georgia Authors winners. The purpose of the Young Georgia Authors Writing Competition is to encourage students to develop enthusiasm for and expertise in their writing, to provide a context to celebrate their writing successes, and to recognize student achievement in arts and academics. This prestigious competition has been engaging Georgia students for more than 2 decades and is open to any student currently enrolled in Georgia Public Schools grades K-12. The following 2 students were RESA level winners for the Young Georgia Authors Writing Competition. Lucy Yeomans, 11th grade, Clark Central High School, and Flora Lectrek, 12th grade, Clark Central High School. Congratulations. And last but not least, we have Thurston Dockery. Is Thurston here? Hi, Thurston. Thurston not only was a RESA level winner, but he also has distinction of being an honorable mention at the state level for our Young Georgia Authors. Congratulations, Thurston. You can go through and shake their hands. We're so proud of all of our Young Georgia Author winners. This concludes our recognitions for tonight. Thank you all.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so Linda's gonna work from her iPad and put this down because it's not working for me. All right, so here we are. We're now at the space of, maybe, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do the agenda before we have our public comments. Yes. All right, so we have an agenda before you. I will gladly entertain a motion to amend or adopt the agenda. Yes, Mr. Worthy.
Madam Presiding Officer, I would like to amend the agenda to give a NSBA report. That's the National School Boards Association Conference, which is held in Philadelphia.
Is that part of section G on the board?
I would make that G6, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry?
I would make that G6.
G6?
Yes.
Okay. So that is an amendment? Is it an amendment or does it just? All right, do we have a second on that amendment? Thank you, Dr. Maddox. So a motion by Mr. Worthy, second by Dr. Maddox. With all in favor, are you ready for the question? All right, good. I'm getting there. All in favor? Woo-hoo. All right. So that motion carries. Thank you. G6 has been added to the agenda. Now, that was the amendment. Do I now have to also pass this agenda, or are we going to consider that all done? All right. May I have a motion now to adopt the agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Mr. Worthy, thank you. And do we have a second? Thank you, Dr. Dykeman. All right. So we have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Ready for the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, like sign. I'm also in favor, unanimous. Thank you. Wow, that was pretty cool. Next, we have we come to the public comment section on the agenda. And we have 6 speakers tonight, and I have a statement that I must read prior to you speaking. So, all meetings of the Board of Education are open to the public except as stipulated by law. It is the belief of the school board that members of the public should have an opportunity to speak at regular board meetings. Therefore, the agenda for every regularly scheduled board meeting will provide an opportunity for any member of the public to speak. Members of the public who wish to speak at a regular board meeting must contact the superintendent's office no later than 4 p.m. the day of the regular meeting to be placed on the visitors list. To be placed on the visitors list, members of the public must provide their name, place of residence, and contact information. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. At this point, remarks must be completed. No speaker will indulge in personal attacks while speaking. All comments are to be addressed directly to the Board of Education. To protect the privacy of our students, speakers shall refrain from identifying specific students by name. Personal concerns may be addressed in writing to the superintendent or president of the Board of Education. Written copies of comments may be provided to the board. At a board meeting, school board members do not respond to questions or comments from the public. The district will respond to the public input as needed or appropriately within 10 working days. All right, with that, according to my list, the order of speakers will be first Mrs. Mary P. Bagby, followed by Ms. Susan Lane, Ms. Willa Fambro, Mr. Burtis Downs, and then Mr. Travis Williams. Is Ms. Bagby here tonight? I did not see her coming in. Ms. Willa Fambro. Oh, I'm sorry, Susan Lane is next. I apologize, Ms. Fambro. I'm going to have to come and buy some cookies. I will be over to get cookies. Ms. Susan Lane, thank you.
Hello again. I'm back about recess. Tonight, I am excited to share with you some highlights from House Bill 83, which passed both the Georgia House and Senate and only awaits the signature of Governor Kemp to be enacted for the 2019-2020 school year. The law requires that each elementary school schedule recess for all students in kindergarten through 5th grade every day, with exceptions for days that include physical education or when reasonable circumstances like rain or field trips preclude it. Part of it reads, each elementary school is encouraged to include an average of 30 minutes per day of supervised, unstructured activity time, preferably outdoors. Though I understand that encouraged is not must, I know that Dr. Means' ad hoc scheduling committee is addressing getting more adequate and equitable voluntary free playtime for students at all elementary schools. Now this next part is must, so please pay close attention. Local boards of education shall establish written policies to ensure that recess is a safe experience for all students, that recess is scheduled so it provides a break during academic learning, and that recess is not withheld for disciplinary or academic reasons. Let me reread that last part again. That recess is not withheld for disciplinary or academic reasons. So now by law, there will be no more keeping kids in for acting the fool or talking to their friends when they should be paying attention, even after they've been warned 5 times, or whole classes being too loud at lunch or in the hallway, or kids not finishing their spelling words or multiplication worksheets, or even being absent yesterday and needing to make up a test. The law doesn't say, except when Johnny is excessively defiant or is really behind. It does not say you can take it away by making Johnny walk laps. It says that as long as Johnny is safe, Johnny must go out to play. Play is not a luxury for kids who are already well behaved. Play is a necessity for all children. And I look forward to reading your policy and seeing it implemented next fall.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Willa Fambro.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I just wanted to ask the board and the superintendent, when are they going to put West Broad back on the agenda? The lease runs out in September, and personally, I do not think it's fair to continue not to deal with this situation. And if there is any way you all could put it on the agenda, because it's not a minor thing for people who are doing this type of work to just change lanes all of a sudden. There's a big pileup behind people when they do that. And these pileups are people's lives. So if you all would be kind enough to put that back on the agenda, it would be sorely appreciated. Thank you.
Mr. Burtis Downs.
Is there a timer tonight? Because I'm going to put one on. All right, I got one too. Good evening. I'm Burtis Downs. I'm a taxpayer, parent, sometimes cheerleader. For years I've been accused of that, and lately a gadfly. But I'm thinking about becoming a governance consultant. And in my role as governance consultant, which I'm kind of kidding about, kind of not, I'm going to turn to something that I've come across about, because I keep hearing about a district in crisis. I read that in an editorial recently, and I've certainly talked to people who agree. They don't agree what the crisis is, but it's around the world, the crisis, and what's a board to do. There's a real good article in Forbes magazine. It's now a few years old, but it certainly still applies. What's a board to do in order to prepare for, prevent, respond to, and recover from the inevitable crises that will befall their institutions? I've served on boards, all of us have served on boards. We know what highly functioning boards and board executive director or superintendent relations look like, and we know what when there are problems and when then there are exterior forces and interior forces that create these crises. But the list of considerations, I've edited 10 because 2 were really truly just in the business world. And no matter how much people think schools can be run by business, I think we all in this room agree they can't. But there are some that really do apply to public boards and to public service. And those kind of checkpoints that I've got on this edited copy, which I'll send around. This is excerpted from a Forbes article. Proactivity is needed. Know the buck really does stop with you, the board. Rebalance your levels of intrusiveness versus hands-off governance. Full board needs to monitor emerging risks. Don't let the lawyers control everything. Sorry, I'm a lawyer too. Adjust your expectation of timing, immediacy rules. Make sure your board is high functioning before a crisis occurs. And finally, the board provides a firm moral center to its organization in a crisis. Indeed, it must. It goes on. It's a long article. I think it's pretty spot on a lot of things. I don't know. It's free. My consultancy is free, as usual. But I think it's pretty sound, and it even has some graphics and stuff. The second thing I want to do is read something that new board members may not know that others have heard. It kind of in one paragraph sums up a lot of what modern education looks like, and it's done by one of the stars in the Senate who will not run for president. He's from a tiny little state in Rhode Island. But Sheldon Whitehouse says, his advice to it's the one that says that he's reading this many notes, sorry. It's the one that says that really there's 2 worlds in education. One of consultants and contracts and administrators at state, federal, and local levels, and the other principals and teachers and the people really doing the work in the schools. And the more he talks to the people doing the work in the schools, the educators in his state, the more he's convinced that the imprint of that first set of circumstances is having such an effect on the second set of people doing the work that it's making it impossible for them to do their jobs. And I'm going to not quote from the sermon from my church on Palm Sunday, because I don't want to do it. It doesn't feel right. But it is Monday, Thursday. You don't schedule this meeting for Monday, Thursday, which means a lot of us would otherwise be at church or here. Yeah, I know it's not right. But I'm hoping that the next meeting is going to be on the second Thursday, which I know is when you all schedule the meetings, and I know that, especially with the chair not here tonight, it's just kind of odd that it got moved to a religious holiday. And here we are. And I'm guessing in 3 weeks it'll be the second Thursday of May, and I'm assuming that's why the meeting. If we don't, I hope you'll let people know, and we'll go from there. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Downs. And our final speaker for tonight is Mr. Travis Williams. Mr. Travis Williams tonight. Okay. Did you have something?
Yes, please. Madam Vice President, we have one student who was not on our list and we want to recognize because he is here with his family. And we apologize and we'll get a certificate to you. But it is Davion Shoulderbrandt, and he was an alternate for Young Georgia Authors from Alps Road Elementary. So we would like for him to come down at this time. Mr. Davis, shake his hand, Mr. Davis. Okay, now go on down. And we will get a certificate. Do we have any other alternates here?
There was a family here. She was Ella Adams. She was fourth grade. I think she went to Georgia office for Whitehead. They left.
Okay, all right. We will get those from the sponsor and make sure that certificates are out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
All right. Okay, so back to our agenda. The next portion of our agenda will be the information items. And these are things that we discussed and reviewed last week or 2 weeks ago in our work session. The first of which is early Head Start. Do we have any updates on that? Awesome. Then next will be the SPLOS report. And I believe you got one of our handouts as well. Any questions on the SPLOS report, any concerns? I'm liking what I hear. Athens Community Career Academy report. week with our joint meeting with the board in April, I'm sorry, I keep thinking about last week, 2 weeks ago, but yes, with the board of the Career Academy. That was a great meeting. We learned a lot, so thank you very much for that. What about next on the agenda would be our Board of Education, Parent Advisory Board report. That is also in our packets. Any questions or concerns about the PAB report? Good work going there. And finally, agenda item F, the Board of Education Committee reports. And
It starts with Mr. Worthy and the Finance Committee. If you have any reports, Mr. Worthy.
No, I do not.
Okay.
Then we go to Mr. Davis, who's the Chair of the Government Relations.
Okay, great.
Thank you. We have, let me get situated here, I'm sorry. The first order of business is we have a Georgia School Board Association legislative agenda that is what the Georgia School Board Association uses every year at the beginning of the legislative season to govern the work of the organization while functioning with the state legislators to pass legislation that support education. And every year we are allowed, after the legislative season, we're encouraged to, as a district, in fact, well, all the districts in the state, school boards are encouraged to look at that agenda and to make additions or subtractions of what the Georgia School Board Association will be advocating for the next year. We have some recommendations that came out of the Government Relations Committee to submit to GSBA, but we need the support of the board to push them forward. And so at this time, I would like to ask for a vote. And I know that these have been out for quite a while, but Madam Chair, I would assume that we would take each one individually. It makes sense to me. The first deals with...
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, Mr. Davis. I believe this portion of the agenda is more for reports.
Oh,
Committee
okay.
reports is not for action.
Okay, I'm sorry. So when we do that later on? Because I didn't see it in the agenda. And this is where it showed up.
So do you, just for clarity, you need the board to act on the recommendations?
Right.
This
They need to vote them up or down for us to move forward. And they're due at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Okay. So we've adopted the agenda for tonight's meeting.
But in the report where it is on the agenda, that is where those items were placed.
May I make a suggestion? I think if you can reach a level of consensus, but not with a vote, I think you will still be within the rules of protocol.
So when I read the list, I didn't have any objections to anything, so I didn't respond or reply to anything. So I would think that, yes, reaching consensus, if someone has an objection to anything that's been proposed, then I would suggest that we find out who that person is, and we can get to agreement on that, and then move forward with silence is consent from my perspective.
We're walking a fine line, but I would just make the suggestion that if Mr. Davis, if you could share the list, if there's a level of comfort among the board, that should be sufficient for you to submit the ideas to GSBA.
Okay. I'm agreeable. I just want to make sure that
I think that would work.
we're following what GSBA is expecting us to do.
I understand.
Okay, the first one is under personnel. And again, these are issues or planks that we are proposing for the Georgia School Board Association legislative agenda for next year. One is to fund a comprehensive mentoring program for new teachers. This is a program that was established in 2017 but never funded. But it was established by the state legislature as a mentoring program, but there's no money in it. So I would like to introduce that, see if there's any questions or concerns about that one.
Can I just ask a general question about this? So these are things that were not in their legislative positions that,
Right.
that we're saying that we would like to have
That's
added.
correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yes, Dr.
Mr. Davis, I believe you passed this legislative list out at the last work session.
That's correct. And it's
I've
also
read-
been in your email.
I'll be honest with you, I've read it and I don't have any objections. I read it thoroughly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, did I?
Thank you. So anyway, the next one, and I do think that the public, it makes sense for the,
So, Mr. Davis, I get the impression that the board is in alignment with the suggestions. I believe it would be informational for the public to hear, but if we can do it in a succinct manner, that would be
Okay.
amazing.
okay. The second proposal is for GSBA to oppose legislation that would create a two-tier TRS, that's Teacher Retirement System contribution rate. That's something that was being proposed at the last session of the legislature. The third proposal deals with undocumented immigrant children who have successfully completed K-12 education, and we are suggesting that part of the GSBA legislative agenda is to ensure that those students are able to attend Georgia institutions with an in-school rate. The third deals with the Hope Scholarship, and what we would like to see do is to increase the funding of the Hope School grant program to cover full tuition. I believe right now it's 75% is what's covered. And so we would like for the GSBA to argue for that position at the state legislature level. And then two of them also deal with what we call the Dreamers or DACA students, asking that that GSBA on the through the state and through the National Organization of National School Board Associations recognize the situation of DACA students and to support the I am very sorry. This is dealing with the yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, I just got confused here. That to have them become legalized as residents of the U.S. And then the last one deals with the encouraging Congress to pass a comprehensive immigration legislation. So I'm putting those forward, and since we have the consensus of the board, we will turn those in, and then later this month we will argue for them.
I'm sorry, John.
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank you. As you know, I'm in alignment with all this too. Just some editorial clarifications. Is the document that's on board docs what you're going to turn in?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Please,
there's some misspelling.
please make sure that GSBA is spelled properly. There are two places where it was misspelled on the first page. Thank you.
Yes.
So I just had one point of clarification on the, I just want to make sure that I understand this. When you were talking about the Hope Grant, that program covers full tuition for students in the technical college system of Georgia.
But Mr. Davis, I believe there's been some discussion with the state legislatures. It's not written in what you passed out to also include to increase the Hope Scholarship in terms of our early learning pre-K. Now, it's not written in there. I think I mentioned that to Dr. Means at the last work session. House Bill 787, I believe it is. Well, no. It's tabled, let me put it that way, okay?
So these recommendations now go to the Georgia School Boards Association for the full board, for all of the members to use to call down to come up with an agenda for the GSBA.
Well,
for next year.
Well, the way the process is that they already have a legislative agenda,
Right.
and they subtract or add to whatever is already there. They do it first at what they call the, I know it's the GOC committee, but that's the one that takes place at the end of this month that will vote on these resolutions and whatever else other school boards have introduced. And then if they're accepted there, then they would be pushed on to the summer GSBA meeting for vote of the entire GSBA.
So Dr. Gant will be representing us there to help support this vote. Thank you so much.
That's great. I've got one other, if I can, Madam Chair, I've got one other item in terms of part of my report, and that is, not to put anybody on the spot, but I like to kind of see who is going to be able to attend the April 23rd GSBA district meeting.
I RSVP, as far as I know, I'm still going to be able to do that.
Okay. It's still not too late if any board member wants to attend, and from there we will be electing a director for District 11. The Georgia School Board Association is divided up into regions, and District 11 is where Clark County is located, and there are 14 other school boards that are part of District 11, and Vernon Payne served very admirably in that position of district director, and on the 23rd, we're going to be voting for a replacement for Vernon.
Super. We're good?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next committee report is
Policy.
policy.
Thank you. Report from policy. We have one bit of policy to work on, one policy tonight to adopt or rescind. That's GBO, and so that will be coming up just a little bit later tonight in section J of this meeting. And we will have one policy to go out, which is BBFBC, which is community engagement. At this morning's policy meeting, the first meeting for some of us out of 3 for today, we discussed several different policies and voted for policies to come to the board. And I won't belabor that, just be aware that we made some progress today. Probably the most important is the Code of Student Conduct, and so that has to be done each year so that we have copies of it in August for the students and parents. And so we made some progress this morning in policy. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Knight. Property Committee, Mr. Ward.
I don't have a report. We met Tuesday, but it was in executive session. And hopefully sometime in the future, as one speaker said tonight, we'll be moving forward on some things.
That ends section F of our agenda. Section G, board committees. Athens Area Community Foundation.
That's me. I don't have a report.
I don't have a report for tonight, but the quarterly board meeting for that is on the 30th of this month, so I will report back next month.
Thank you. Community Oversight Committee, SPOS report.
We met on Tuesday, and actually the finishing touches are being placed on CORE and BHL. We also toured Hillsman, and I tell you, it is so beautiful. The work is coming along very well. It's a gorgeous, it will be a gorgeous school. And the Clark Central softball field improvements, it is part of our consent agenda for tonight.
Super. Thank you, Dr. Maddox. Envision Athens, we meet the first Thursday of the month, and so we'll be meeting again in May. But we had committee meetings last month. It is still progressing. We are still out in the community and participating wherever we can to bring attention to the work that's happening in Envision Athens and to make sure that we still have the voice of the community as we move forward with initiatives. I believe Dr. I'll leave it at that. Educate Athens meets here at the Career Academy at the HT Edwards Complex, and I think our district is very, very actively engaged in the work around the education initiative. So lots of things coming down the pipe on that. Any questions about that? All right, so next, how about the Foundation for Excellence in Public Education? We got a lot of email about that.
Madam Chair, I believe that's Mr. Bybee's assignment in his. I'm sorry, Dr. Berry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was assigned.
That's right. You other duties as assigned to you. Welcome again. Yes.
So I haven't been to a board meeting as of yet, but I was able to attend the award nominees tea with the Foundation for Excellence on April 8th. They did recognize 125 teachers and other staff who had been nominated for Foundation for Excellence awards. It was a really lovely, wonderful event. Very glad that I was able to attend. The official award ceremony and reception, I believe, is going to be in October, after they make their decisions, award recipient decisions. And you can visit athensffb.org to learn more.
Thank you, Dr. Berry. Next is the GSBA report.
No report at this time. As Mr. Davis mentioned, in June, I'll be attending the conference and have a report after that.
How exciting for you. I've been one time. I really enjoyed it. I think you'll learn a lot. You can't be in 5 places at once, so enjoy it. And we have item 6 that was added by amending the agenda. That's the NSBA report, Mr. Worthy.
And again, Madam Chair, I think Mr. Worthy and Mr. Davis attended the National School Board Association convention, so I don't know if Mr. Davis would want to also contribute this evening or in a future meeting, but just want to make sure that they both have the platform. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Sure. Mr. Davis is ahead of me. He sent his out by email. Am I correct on it, Mr. Davis?
That's correct.
Okay. But anyway, Mr. Davis and I attended the NSBA National Conference in Philadelphia for about, 3 days there, and really enjoyed it. And I can tell you the buzzwords at that conference, school safety and equity. School safety and equity. I was happy to be in on some conversations about school safety, and you can see why, because of what's going on around our country with school shootings. And it's the 20th anniversary of what happened in Columbine 20 years ago. But anyway, those were the buzzwords. Georgia had a strong representation at that conference, and I'll say that because at the first general session there, you had a group of young men, a male chorus out of Jonesboro, Georgia, and they were just sensational. People just couldn't stop applauding, and when I say people, I'm talking about something over 5,000 people, and it was not an auditorium, whatever they call that meeting place there, but they were absolutely sensational. And there was another presentation by Fulton County Board of Education and their school board attorney that I attended after that, which I'll be talking about in a minute. But I tell you, school board members, if you have not attended that conference, you probably need to do so. It'll be held in Chicago the next year, I think somewhere around the last of March, the 1st of April. You have to dress warm because that wind almost cut me in two on Saturday in Philadelphia. But anyway, I attended 4 sessions and I also visited the exhibits at least twice. And as our Madam Chair said a few minutes ago, when you attend these conferences, you can't be in 10 places at one time. Well, with the National School Board Association, you can't be in 100 places at one time because there's so many sessions, and I go through and pick out the sessions that I'm going to attend. And I think Mr. Davis uses his iPhone to download the sessions, etc. there. But there's so much going on around the country pertaining to education. So, okay, I mentioned that I attended 4 sessions and visited the exhibits at least twice. The first session I attended was how to ensure that board policies are relevant and also effective and legal, Dr. Knox, and I'm going to suggest something to you in a minute, okay?
I'm taking notes.
The second session, and I say that because Dr. Knox is the chairperson for our policy committee. The second session, what does it take to improve reading achievement, even in schools in low poverty population? The third session I attended was committing to equity boards and districts that expect success from students. I'll be talking a whole bunch about, well, I better change that because I don't want to prolong the time. The fourth session that I attended was preparing students today for careers of tomorrow. Now, going back to that first session that I mentioned to you earlier about where Fulton County board members and also their attorney, they were the presenters of that. And I'm going to make this quick, Dr. Knox, because I'm going to be calling them to gather some more information on that. But I really like what they said. They don't have standing committees like we do, okay? Because that district is 72 miles long. And what they do, and they only have 5 board members, 5 women, okay, all females, okay? But anyway, they actually, after they have a board meeting, each member would go to their district and inform that district in terms of what's going on. But here's what I want to share with you, Dr. Knox, later on after I gather some more information on that. What they do, they have a cycle that they follow, in terms of reviewing policies. And that cycle would go for 4 years. And after 4 years, every school board member has gone through every policy in that district. I really like that. I was going to talk with the school board attorney and also the school board members tentatively after the session, but it was so packed, and I looked up, people lined up, and I had to get to my next session on time. But I'll be talking to you, Dr. Knox, and you, if you're interested in that, and you can share that with the board later on.
Yeah, I would like to include Don Myers in that conversation, if that's permissible.
Great, absolutely, not a problem at all.
We've been talking about such things. Thank you.
Okay, very quickly, session 2, improving reading. And that's the buzzword too around the country. And I have to give our superintendent credit. His first year here, and that big meeting he had down at the Classic Center, he talked about that. If a student can read and do basic math, let me put it this way, they can be dangerous, okay? And that's the emphasis. You have to put emphasis on oral reading with fluency, vocabulary, which means word meanings. And I even asked a question in that session whether the presenters were familiar with the Deutsch word list. The Deutsch word list that was developed back in 1940 by Dr. Edward Deutsch. Students can become familiar with that list. Those are the words that they use in the newspaper, magazines, and textbooks. And the list goes on and on and on. So we need to put some emphasis on that in Clark County School District. And increasing reading comprehension. You know, sometimes a person can read 4 or 5 pages, close the book, what you read? Can't tell you. You got to read and you got to comprehend. And also decoding. I won't get into all of that. All right, session 3, committing to equity in your school district. There's a gentleman that is known really worldwide, especially nationwide, by Dr. William Parrott. He puts a lot of emphasis on this. And I guess I can sum this up by saying, Dr. Means, everything that was said in that session mirrored what you've been talking about here in Clark County School District. Almost exactly. Dr. Parrott may be giving you a call, Dr. Means, but I told him we don't have any money to pay him, okay? But anyway, I'm going to move on from that. Well, one thing I want to put some emphasis on, because I say this all the time, and I said this as a high school principal. When you're talking about equity, one thing you have to have young people to understand, and I guess it was Dr. Parrott or the lady that was assisting him, they don't care how much you know until they know that you care. You can get the, thank you, you can get the best out of them, okay? I'm going to move on. Like I said, I don't want to prolong too much time here, okay? Preparing students today for careers of tomorrow. Mr. Lawrence Harris, we met with, the Board of Education met with the board and also the Career Academy about a week ago. And I said to him in that meeting, the things that I heard in Philadelphia was exactly the things that he was saying. Soft skills. You have to teach kids soft skills. You have to teach them hard skills. And one of the things that you have to do, you have to make sure that your curriculum is updated. You can't teach kids on an outdated curriculum and expect them to leave there and go out there in the world of work to get a job. You got to update that curriculum. And the same thing with the equipment that you're using. You can't teach and train students on outdated equipment. If we, I heard Dr. Mean say this, we got to get out of the H.T. Edwards building so the Career Academy can grow. We just started a cosmetology program there. And I'm quite sure we have updated equipment. Okay? And as we continue to grow the academy, that's what we need to put emphasis on. All righty. The last thing I want to say, I want to put emphasis on this. When you visit the national or attend the National School Boards Association Conference, one of the most powerful things that you can do is network with other boards from around this country when you network with them. And share what you're doing, and they're sharing what they're doing with you. And I tell you, we're doing some great things. And the things that I share, you know, you see eyelids will go up. And Dr. Means, I was going through the exhibits, and I went to a little corner and got me a hot dog and a Pepsi for lunch, sat down at the table and started a conversation. I have a big mouth, folks, with these people. And lo and behold, they were from the state of Wisconsin. Okay? And they were familiar with your school district that you were superintendent at. And I talked with a number of people, some from Connecticut and what they're doing, some from Arkansas. I try to stay away from the South a little bit. I want to say the Midwest and also the Northeast and whatnot. But when you go to these conferences, you make sure you communicate with these people because you can learn something. That is very powerful. Okay, moving on. I got some information that I need to pass out. Let's see. Yeah, pass that down. Three more. I've given Dr. Ming his. Okay, now Now, what I'm passing down, and when I go to the conference, I always try to make notes that I'm going to attend sessions, and when I go through the exhibits, I'm going to be looking for things that we have been talking about and discussing here in Clark County School District. What I just passed down the line there is on Bluebird buses. Why? About 2 months ago, we purchased 10 Bluebird buses versus another company. And I had a long conversation with these people. So anyway, study that information there, because I'm quite sure sometime in the near future we'll be purchasing some more buses, and you can increase your knowledge about Bluebird. Bluebird is the top of the list to me. Not because they're made in Georgia now. The Bluebird industry is right down in Fort Valley, Georgia. But do study that information. One more piece for you. Let's forward that way. She passed, she's down, one of these decent. Okay, now what I have passed down, board members, now this is on downloading the NSBA. I know Mr. Davis is really good at this. I didn't use my iPhone to download this, but if you look at the last one on that list, it said assess handouts. You can actually do this with your iPhone, okay? And also, when you look at the conference handouts, you see that QR code there? Loaded with information there. And I think according to what was said, this information would be available until June 1st. But I just thought that I would pass that along to you. I Xeroxed that from the large manual here because everything is so high-tech now. And I know when Mr. Davis and I walked in to register, we didn't have to stand in line, did we, Mr. Davis? They had sent us a QR code like this. You scan it, print your ID tag out, give you your bag, and you're on your way. That's my NSBA report, Mrs. Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Worthy. Mr. Davis?
Yes, thank you. I think one of the most intriguing things, because I did my notes differently and just kind of summarized what I thought was the highlights. One of the more interesting, and I hope board members have had a chance to look at it, is what's happening at Van Necker High School in South Fulton County. And I think Dr. Means went there recently, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And I wish I had gone with you, because I would have loved to have actually seen the school. This is a school that has created, in fact, there are 6 high schools in Fulton County that have adopted this model. And it is what's called a 3DE. It's a junior achievement school. It's a school within a school. And it takes about a third of the student population, and it has its own assistant principal, its own curriculum that is consistent with the county's curriculum and the state curriculum. But it has serious partnership with the business community. And they credit this program at Benjamin Van Necker High School, this 3DE program, to raising their CCRPI score from 56 to 66 in 3 years. And so they got off the list, because if it's 60 or below on the CCRPI, then you get on the list of the state. So it was a very intriguing program. They are expanding this junior achievement. They call it's a junior achievement type school. And like I said, the model is a school within a school. Fulton County started with BizTown, which is of course what is being proposed for the old Gaines property. And then from there, they rolled they rolled out this 3DE school within a school model, and they're going to be doing it to 26 other high schools within the state. And you know, I haven't really had a chance to talk to Dr. Means in terms of his experiences in terms of moving that forward, but it seemed like a very interesting idea that could be brought here. One thing that is really stressed in terms of the discussion around equity is the fact that our curriculum, and I'm talking about statewide, I'm talking about nationwide, we are a very archaic, we have a very archaic education system in this country. And there are forward thinkers who attended this conference who pointed out that the curriculum is totally outdated and that we need to measure success differently. And you know, we need graduates who have both the soft and the hard skills necessary to make their way in this world. And we're just not doing it. I mean, we're teaching the way that we did, you know, 50 years ago. And so when I hear people say that, I do take that personally in terms of what we're doing here in Clark County as well. Nationwide, they talk about, and this is nationwide, 70% of the high school kids who start college, a third of them never finish. So they never go past the first year. And again, those are nationwide statistics. I would really hesitate to look how they are at Georgia. But one thing that was not in my notes, and I would like to see if there's any interest of the board to track our graduates. There is I've got literature on a company, and I'm sure there are a number of companies that do this, and we can do it ourselves. But I think we really need a way of tracking where our graduates go, you know, 5 years after graduation. You know, where are they at? And like I said, there's a company out there that you give them the data and you give them the check, and they will, the payment, and they will track a district's students when they graduate to see what they do and how successful they are, as well as getting feedback from them. And I really encourage us doing that. I know we started doing that with not tracking teachers, but trying to get feedback from our teachers who are for various reasons moving out of the district. But I would like to see us get some real data in terms of how our students are progressing after they graduate. The last thing is that no one took me up on it, but I did propose a kind of a bonding experience with this board in terms of a book reading. I suggested this book called Disrupting Poverty by William Parrott. And he's very well renowned, and they do a lot with he works for schools as well, but he talked very complimentary to the University of Virginia, a company that a university that we've contracted with to work with some of our schools. But I'm just suggesting that might be something that we can think about. But the book I'm talking about is Disrupting Poverty, and it just came out. And it really has a lot of, not just information, but kind of things that can be done to address students whose needs are not being met by the school system. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for that very informative report from both of you. A lot of information shared. Dr. Means, did you have something that you wanted to add?
No, ma'am. I did have a question for Greg, if that's all In your report, Greg, you said in your last bullet, but before the invite to the board thing, that Avid has a one-day training for non-teachers, and it's suggested that board members attend.
Yes.
Did they elaborate on exactly how you can do that? Because I tried last year, and I really couldn't get any traction with Avid. I tried to register as a board member.
Dr. Means, would you speak to that? Because he and I did talk about that, and I think he's got something maybe he can work out for us.
I actually teach the course.
I was sorry I couldn't attend last year. I tried. I tried real hard to register, and they just would never.
So I teach the course for board members and community members who are interested in learning more about what Avid is. Mr. Davis and I had a chance to talk, and what I will attempt to do per Mr. Davis's suggestion is to see if we can customize it for this group, this group in particular. They want to hold on to their curriculum, so I would have to get permission to use their curriculum, but I'll make that request.
Good, thank you. I was disappointed I couldn't attend. I tried, and she never wrote back.
Okay, great. We are making record time. We are moving now to item 8 on the agenda, which brings us to the minutes of the previous meetings. I think we have 3, or 2, just 2. So the work session, February 28th. Our regular meeting, March 7th. I'm reading from my iPad. I'm not looking at the wrong thing now. I'm correct? Okay, great. Are there any questions about the minutes from the work session? Any unanswered concerns? None? May I have a motion? Or will we both at the same time? Or do I need to do separately? Yes. Jeff,
Just one at a time.
one at a time. All right. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of the work session, February 28, 2019?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. That's a motion by Dr. Knott, second by Mr. Worthy. Thank you. Questions? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye, raise your hand. Thank you. And opposed, like sign. Regular meeting, March 7th. May I have any questions or concerns about the regular meeting notes from March 7th? Yes, ma'am.
So no, I don't have any questions.
No? Oh, okay, it's your turn to go.
Yes.
May we have a motion to accept those?
Mike, you want to make a motion?
Yes, yay. All right, so we have a motion by Dr. Beard. Do we have a second? Second by Dr. Maddox. All right. Question? Hearing none. All in favor of adopting the minutes? Yay, thank you. That's unanimous. All right, and then finally, we're moving to the financial report, which you have in front of you. Audience, I'm so sorry. We don't have our overhead, but Mr. Larry, come on in. Mr. Larry Hamilton.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Means, and audience. Tonight, we're going to cover the February 2019 financial statements. On the handout you have in front of you, the first page is the balance sheet for February 2019. As you can see, the asset cash balance was $59.8 million. The unreserved fund balance was $59.8 million as well. If you go to the second page, this is the financial report for 2019 February. At this time, we've got 96.2% collected of all our ad valorem tax, with only about $2.9 million remaining. Year-to-date, for the month of February, out of $150.1 million in budget for revenue, we've collected $113.4 million at 75.5% collection rate year-to-date. On the expense side, of $151.4 million in budget, we've spent $82.6 million for a spend rate of 55.2% year-to-date for the month of February. If you go to the last two pages, you'll see the cash flow for the month of February 2019. A couple highlights on this is, if you look at the first section for revenue, right now, based on a $150.1 million budget for revenue, we're projecting with actual data through the month of July through February, and only 4 months left of budgeted data, to be collecting $150.9 million, which means at this point in time, we're projected to collect $832,000 more than budgeted. If you look at the bottom on the cash paid out, you'll see that we have a budget of $151.4 million, and based on data, we're projected to spend $150.7, which means we're projected to underspend by $684,000. On the next page, at the very top, we had a deficit built in this budget of $1.2 million. Between the revenue collected and the expenses not expensed, we have a projected underspend of $101.5 million versus the budget of $1.2, and at this time, we're projecting a surplus of $279,000. If you go to page 3, starting with the KPIs, on the cash position, you'll see that currently, both for the cash position and the fund balance position, we have more both cash and fund balance than we did the same time this last year. The next 2 slides show that on the income, we're exactly at collections this year as we were last year, year to date for income collections. And on the expense side, we're slightly ahead of where we spent money this year compared to last year. Part of the reason for that is we had a 4% increase in TRS that we had to pay to the state. The next page will show a breakdown of the money collected and the money expensed. For February 2019, we collected $8.5 million, and the majority of that money was collected through the QBE formula of about 5.7. On the expense side, for the month of February 2019, we spent about $12.3 million. The majority of that money was spent for instructional purposes of $7.8 million. On the next page, on the next 2 graphs side by side, you'll see a comparison of the budget revenue projected from July through June in black, and you'll see the actual revenue collected in red. As you can see, we're slightly ahead on revenue collections. On the budget versus actual for expenditures, you'll see the same color code, and you'll see we're either right at expenditures or right below it year to date. In the last graph, you'll see the monthly deficit surplus projected for 2018. Starting from the left to the right, you'll see that we started the budget off as a zero balance budget at the beginning of the school year. And we dropped it down to a negative loss in August, back up to a surplus in September, back down to a loss in October, November, and we've gone back to a surplus. At this time, the surplus was projected to be, as we had discussed before, $279,000. And that is financial report for February 2019.
I got really excited at that $800,000 until I realized it's February, so. I'm getting, you gotta stop teasing me like that.
Yes, sir.
In absence of visuals, there were a lot of numbers shared. If, for the public, if you can just give a 3-sentence paragraph overview of what is our status as a school district financially, and what should the public know, understanding our financial situation as of this month?
Sure. So if we put it in terms of what we're doing in the budget versus what we're doing either in revenue collections or expenditures, right now we are collecting, if you were to think of the budget at 100% for revenue, we're collecting revenue at 100.5%. If you were to think of the expenses being spent at 100%, we're actually only spending it at 99.5%. So that 0.5% difference in revenue expenses is where we're coming up with a surplus. Also, with the surplus being $279,000, that means that we'll have money going into the fund balance for the next school year.
Thank you. Great job, I don't know why I can't remember this, keep the number. So, moving, we don't have to, we don't vote on the financial be mixing my boards up, but do we
I
vote,
think-
we vote on the financial report?
I think you do.
Yeah,
Yes, you do.
Okay, all right, good. You've heard the
Yes,
financial report, given to us by Mr. Campbell. Anyone have any questions? I have a motion to
You got it.
accept it, Mr. Worthing.
I move that we accept the financial report.
Second by
Second.
Dr. Knox. Ready for the question? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, same sign? Awesome. Mr. Davis?
I did.
All right, I didn't see it, thank you. All right, so we're done with the financial report, we're down to item J, policy. I'm trying to get to item K, Dr. I'm really trying to get it.
Okay, I will speak to this as Chair of Policy. The policy that is, well, first of all, I guess, let's back up here. We have a policy to go out for public review for 4 weeks. This is policy BBFBC, Community Engagement Policy. And since this is really kind of my first time to do this, someone will have to remind me exactly how much I should say. I would like to say less rather than more, but I will just give the headings here. So this is a board community engagement policy, and it covers requests to meet with the Board of Education for community organizations or community groups, and also discusses board member attendance to community meetings and events in their capacity as an elected official. And so I'll say on behalf of the policy committee, we spent a long time on this, and I think good work, because the policy got shorter and more compact. And so that is all I'll say, with one exception. As I'm looking at this on board docs, Dr. Myers, I'm seeing what looks like a formatting error, where we have a big capital A and then we have a little capital A. Do you see that? I didn't notice that before. I don't know if that happened somewhere in transition, but so anyway, if that could be fixed, that would be good. So that's what policy is bringing up in terms of sending out. Right? You might remember for new board members, we have a process where things go out and then they come back. This is to be posted for public review for 4 weeks. And so on behalf of the policy committee, this is brought to you. There it is.
And we make those comments through our website.
That's right.
Awesome. And that's it.
No, but we have to do something with it now.
We need to vote on this. Do I have a motion to to send the policies out for public comment? So moved, Mr. Davis, second.
A second on that.
Second by Mr. Worthy. Ready for the question? And seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? It's unanimous to send out policy B.
Yes.
H.
Nope.
Okay.
BBFBC.
BBFBC, thank you.
Okay. In addition, that was J1. J2 on our agenda, policies to adopt and rescind. And I'll do this the way I probably should have done the last one. Apologies. I will simply bring it from policy, a motion to adopt policy GBO, professional personnel resignation. So that is brought forward. And Mike can probably help us with this. If this comes out of committee, is that a motion by definition? Or does it need to be motioned and seconded?
I've got a recommendation from the standing committee, needs no second, it does need a motion.
Okay, so here it is. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I move that we accept the recommendation from the committee. The motion by me and seconded by Dr. Maddox that we move this policy out for, is this out for public or this is done?
No, this has come back.
Policy. It is not
Okay.
adopted, it is to be adopted, so thank you.
So we have motion and second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this policy. Are you ready for the question?
No. Discussion.
Are you ready for discussion?
Yes. Yes. So, first of all, we have in board docs that as of March 25th, no public comment was received. Can we have an update on that? Was there any public comment whatsoever? Thank you.
All in favor?
No, other,
Get that first?
I actually wanted to say something if
Yes,
that's
sir, please.
allowed.
On the discussion.
So I'm in an interesting position as policy chair because I was not policy chair for most of the history of GBO. And so speaking as an individual board member, I have had concerns with this policy for some time. And I can boil that down very simply to the strike through in the second paragraph. That the strike through was that any employee under contract with the Board of Education who wishes not to fulfill the terms of their contract must request in writing that the Board of Education release the employee. And this policy changes that somewhat, and we have had discussion previously that the changes that the superintendent is authorized to accept on behalf of the Board of Education resignations. And that explanation was given in terms of needing to expedite things and on behalf of the staff that are in situations. We had quite a few different scenarios that were presented that I consider to be kind of like best case scenarios, which this policy then operates in its best case scenario as a very important expediter of things that help our staff. However, my perception of policy is that you also have to look at the other side and look at situations that are not necessarily best case. And that's of special interest to me because when I ran for the board, I said publicly that I felt that the board had not really fulfilled all of its obligations, that it was kind of letting other people do its work. And this unfortunately aligns with what I felt was true at the time. And I think that in my own personal opinion, again, I'm trying to wear the hat, there are many hats, but of just me as one little board member, that I've not ever been comfortable with the board not taking some kind of role here, but rather that letting the superintendent do it. That I can also imagine cases that are not the best case that were presented earlier, several months ago to the board. And so I've had continued reservations about this policy. Now, those have clearly not been echoed by anyone in the community, and I'm very happy to cast a no vote and move right on. But that's where I stand as an individual board member. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those comments. We have the motion, we have the second. Are we ready for the question? All in favor of adopting policy GBO? Let it be shown by raising your hand or saying aye. All opposed? We have one opposition. Dr. Thank you. All right.
And that concludes policy.
Thank you so much. Good job. All right. So next we have on our agenda, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members, community members. I think the timing is really, and we did not plan this, but Mr. Worthy, thank you for all of your documents related to Bluebird. If there's any community member who's interested in driving buses for the Clark County School District, on April 27th, we will have a job fair for not only bus drivers, but also for our custodial staff. I think so often school districts will promote the fact that we have job fairs for teachers, but the folks who are our custodians and our bus drivers are just as essential to our operation as anyone else in this room tonight or our teaching staff. It takes a village to run a school district our size. And so the job fair will be here at Clark Central High School on April 20. Is it Clark Central? What? I'm sorry, at the Career Academy. We want to make sure you get to the right place. So it'll be at H.T. Edwards building on Saturday, April 27th. This is the time of year where we start celebrating our seniors and congratulating them. And so I want to make sure board members are aware that the GLADS Rise Up event is on Monday, April 22nd. This is year 2 of that event. What Clark Central started last year was to recognize their seniors who were moving on to post-secondary opportunities. I'm really excited about this year because they've made a tweak to their activity, and it's an all-day activity, but they've made a tweak in that they're going to recognize not only students who are going on the 4-year colleges and universities, but also into the workforce and into the armed forces, because we should honor all 3 of those pathways. And so the kids, I shouldn't say kids, but the seniors, the young people, the young men and women of Clark Central will be recognized on April 22nd. Cedar Shoals will have their first decision day. They're calling their day a decision day, and that will be taking place on April 23rd. And that starts at 1 o'clock. So April 22nd is the Clark Central event. That's a Monday. That's next week Monday. On Tuesday the 23rd is the Cedar Shoals event, which is on, it starts at 1 p.m. And then finally, in terms of updates, on April 23rd, that next week Tuesday, that evening, I've heard a lot in the community from parents and community members about discipline and behavior in our schools. And so I will have a community meeting at Whit Davis Elementary School. I'm curious to hear what the community has to say about discipline and behavioral issues. I think I hear many different things. In some parts of the community, I hear that the school system is too stringent and disciplined too quickly. When I talk to teachers and staff, they will say that they are struggling with behavior issues from certain students, and it's detracting from the educational environment. I have shared this before, but I'll say it again on the record. I'm concerned about the disproportionality of students who are disciplined here. I understand that our student population is 74% students of color, but the disproportionality of our discipline in terms of how it is actually levied within the school system is of grave concern to me. When you go to our alternative school or you look at our expulsion data, it is primarily African American students. And again, I understand that that population represents 49% of our student population, but in many cases, the representation of African American students double. It is double almost double that. It's around 80 to 85%. So it's not all the way doubled, but it's pretty close, and I'm concerned about it. So I think there's a lot of different opinions around what to do and how to do it, how to address this issue. I've heard many people in the community talk about parents and how do we engage parents more actively. I've heard that the school district should do a much better job in communicating to those parents how to get engaged and not to use education jargon when they do come to meetings. So I'm anxious for this meeting because I'm curious to hear what the community has to say. I'm going in with a blank pad of paper, and I'm going to listen to what many people have to say, because what I continue to hear in the community are just differing opinions. It depends on the stakeholder group that I'm speaking with in terms of what they feel and how they articulate their concerns. And in many cases, as with most school district issues, some of those opinions conflict with one another. And so I think it's healthy for us to get all those different opinions in the room and have a facilitated conversation. So I'm looking forward to that discussion on the 23rd at Whit Davis. Starts at 6 p.m. I just wanted to update the board on those exciting items. It is the end of the school year. We're in the midst of milestone testing right now, which I believe signals the end of the school year is around the corner. And so if you have a student in our school system, make sure that they get a good night's sleep and they get breakfast in the morning. If you are a community member, when you see kids walking to school, just put your thumb out of the window and give them a thumbs up and wish them good luck in finishing the school year. When we are back together in May, we'll be closer to graduation, and I would like to update the board around graduation preparations at that time. That's the conclusion of my report.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Means. Let's see, next on the agenda, the consent agenda and discussion. So, I believe we had this conversation last 2 weeks ago about the approval of the items on the consent agenda. So I'm just simply going to read these items, and if someone wants to offer discussion on them, if they just stop me, that'll be fine. I have no request to take anything from the consent agenda, so I'm assuming they will move forward. So the approval of the field trips, and again, they failed to contact me to do a chaperone. They're going to some interesting places. Consent. All right, 3 columns partnership for fiscal year 2018. I honestly don't remember what that was, but I read it again today. So
It's payment of a bill from last school year.
that's exactly. Thank you so much. All right, and then yes.
I truly consent, but I just want to make sure that, will we hear a presentation about this? Because I'm still not really clear about what their services are. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay.
It stays consent. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, I think Dr. Manners was just expressing that she is requesting a presentation on 3 columns.
Super. Approve the Hillsman projector purchase.
As Dr. Mattis said, the building's being constructed and it's pretty close to being done. The children need projectors. And the teachers.
And, you know, I have forever, that's a sad conversation, but I have to tell you about my investments in these little miniature ones. Listed on my down that road. Okay, and then finally, approval of third-party administration contract with Arista.
I think Mr. Hamill presented that issue with the third-party administrator or TPA issue or 2 weeks ago.
Any concerns about that? Okay, and approve the this is a good one. Approve the Clark Central softball field improvements. We have people interested in that.
Yeah.
On consent?
Could I make a comment on that?
Please.
Yeah. I just wanted to highlight the fact that this $1.25 million item, that is correct, right? There's some part of that. That was number 1 on the capital upgrades request from the Clark Central athletic directors. So being very responsive to that.
I believe there's a baseball game happening right now. Isn't that correct, Dr. Myers? And I think if Clark Central wins, they go to the playoffs for the first time in 20 years or something in baseball. So I think that's where Dr. Ward is.
I did not cross off the email that came out today on this, but I'm hoping that we are on that 100% because this is the first time we would be ahead of something.
Well, to Dr. Knott's point, and I appreciate you recognizing it, the athletic directors and our principals have identified and shared that they feel heard because they will say that they haven't had ample investments in their facilities for years. And so I think we're trying to be responsive to our athletic directors and high school principals. And I think per the request from Dr. Gant on April 4th, we did send out the list of their prioritized list of other activities and improvements from a facility standpoint.
And also just to clarify that it's not 1.2 million for this project. It was somewhere around 400,000.
I think we dedicated 1.25 million for both schools for overall projects. All the projects. And we said that that's our starting point. If they come back and they share with us, I think the softball field is a really good example. I believe we were dangerously close to a Title IX issue by continuing to invest in the baseball field and not addressing the softball field. So if they continue to find areas of concern, we told them, don't hesitate, don't feel like that's a limiting point. I think this is also a really nice project for Mr. Fisher, our Chief of Operations, to really dig into. He oversaw this type of work for the University of Georgia, and so he can eyeball these things pretty quickly, and he's already recognized that we're woefully behind. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair. Okay, with the consent agenda, and I think I'm correct on this, with the first 3 items, we already approved, that was for the consent. We can go ahead and vote on those, and then I think it was 5 items.
I believe all items, Mr. Worthy, were consent.
All of them?
They were all consent. I think Madam Chair was just trying to review the items one more time for the public and board's sake. But I think you're at a point now where you can say, are you going to accept the consent agenda or not?
So, your motion to pass the consent agenda?
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Thank you. Second by Mr. Worthy. Any questions? All right. All in favor? Great. Opposed? There are none. We were unanimous. Thank you. That consent agenda is approved. I'm excited for Clark Central. We have an item M, other agenda items.
There's nothing there.
There's nothing there. Then I'd like to just take this moment, if this is an appropriate time, I'd like to just make a quick announcement to our thank you to the board. We're fast approaching superintendent's review time, and so the superintendent's review committee will meet, and we will be getting an instrument to you very shortly, so that we can actually get on time and on our schedule. So if you have any concerns about that or comments, look for our meeting notes, and please join us.
Yes. Do you have a meeting scheduled?
Not yet. We'll be
Not yet.
at the end of the month.
Before then, thank you.
Yeah. And item N, do we have personnel recommendations? No, ma'am. Oh, wow. And, oh my goodness, what time is it? I'm just gonna stop right here. All right, so we're down to item O on our agenda.
Madam Chair,
What?
if I could, one thing is that I thought that we had kind of worked up the idea that when we come to this part of the agenda, that we actually have a kind of a human resources report. But I have not seen it listed as that. And
This month, we had no personnel items to present. And yes, typically we will bring items to you, but it's not every month. We'll bring it when appropriate.
Okay, if we could just kind of alter the agenda so it's there, because I do think it's important, seeing that that's 90% of our budget.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, now are we at item O?
Sure.
All right. I usually do.
I'll do it.
We need a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.